Good evening, everybody. How are you? Excellent. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Coming tonight to have this amazing Q&A that we're going to have. Oh, I am Jarett Wieselman. I am very excited to be here, and we're going to be speaking with the star of one of the stars of Underground, the amazing Jurnee Smollett-Bell. Give her a hand. Hello.
Hi, thank you. Hello. My beautiful people. I'm so sorry. We were stuck in traffic. I live so far.
You are here now, and that is all that matters, Jurnee. Congratulations on Underground. First of all,
thank you.
What a phenomenal piece of television. What an incredible story that you guys told over these 10 episodes, and now a second season coming very, very soon.
Because of you all, though.
I mean, we're going to get into sort of everything, but I would love to know, I mean, what was it like the first time you read the script for this project?
You know, honestly, I was a little skeptical when my agent sent it to me. I was like, they're going to do a TV show? I mean, not a film, but a TV show? But he said to me, he said, Jurnee, this is one of the best pilots out there right now. And we were actively negotiating for me to actually do another show. And after I read, well, the very first line, I don't want to paraphrase their beautiful writing, but it opens and you see feet running, pounding, and you hear Kanye West, Black Skinhead. And I was like, wait, do I have the right script here? And when I finished, when I got to that last page, my mouth was just open. It was just so compelling writing. It was so complex. It was from such a different angle than I had ever seen, such an angle of empowerment. And I wanted to read the next script. I was like, wait, where's the next one? Y'all can't just like end it there. Like, it was a page turner for me. And I immediately texted our director, Anthony Hemingway, whom I had worked with on True Blood, and said, look, I'm your Rosalee. And I sent him like a whole chapter in a text about, you know, really all the reasons why I felt there was no other actress that could play Rosalee but me. And he just responded with, he sent back this picture, and it was of his pitching book that he had actually used to get to be hired as director, and next to the name Rosalee was my picture. Yeah. So he then set up a meeting for me to meet with Misha and Joe, our creators.
I mean, when you have something as wonderful as that told to you, is there an audition process at that point, or are you sort of like, oh, good, so this is mine, and I'm just going to roll into set on day one?
Well, they hadn't even started casting yet. That was the problem, because WGN is such a new network. They weren't following the same like pilot season schedule that all the other networks were. So I was in this situation of, oh my gosh, do I take this other show, which is a pretty great show, and you know, is a hit now even, and I was like in this scenario of, or do I just kind of like wait for WGN to just sit and offer me this? And so, you know, I have a really great agent with Dar Rollins at ICM, and you know, he got me in the room, and I did. I had a general meeting with Misha and Joe, but then I did have to read for. A few days later, we put me on tape so that WGN could see it. They weren't ready to just like offer me the role. You know, networks, oftentimes, y'all know, they need to see it. So I did read, and then I got offered it.
In general, I ask this question a lot, and I always get the same like look of just abject horror on the actor's face, but do you enjoy auditioning? Is it something that okay. So it's a familiar look. I've seen it before. This room has seen it before.
Honestly, and I've auditioned, I mean, since I was a baby. And I want to say, like, I want to fall in love with it. Like, my brother genuinely enjoys auditioning. And I'm not one of them. You know, it's a very unique muscle, because for me and my process, there's so many other steps involved prior to getting on set that you're not allowed with the auditioning room. It's like its own beast, you know. So no, I don't like auditioning.
Well, when you talk about, I mean, I would love to know, you talk about all those other steps. I mean, whether it's Rosalee or any of the other amazing roles you played, in general, sort of how do you describe your process of getting into a character?
It changes for each character. The main common thread is research for me, and trying to find the internal world, and asking all the questions. Who is she? What does she want? And how is she going to get it? But really, every role requires something different. I mean, research for Underground was so extensive. As you can imagine, I had to read a lot of books. I watched a lot of documentaries, read the slave narratives, which was really important for me and for Joe and Misha, and a lot of other cast members, because oftentimes, in high school textbooks, the way they talk about slavery and particularly the Underground Railroad, which is a very unique little niche part of our history, it's from such a removed point of view. And for us, we really wanted to make sure that these were living, breathing human beings, not victims, that they were people who fell in love, they lost their children, they loved to eat, they sang, they laughed, they told jokes like you and I. And within this very oppressive system, how did they do that? And the slave narratives was the best source because it's from the first point of view.
In the finale, which I believe everyone just watched, there's that great speech Rosalee gives at the end that every time I see it, it still brings a tear to my eye. And she talks about, we have to tell our stories. We have to be the ones to tell our stories. And this really strikes me as a great example of that, because as you're saying, these are human being stories. These are not slave stories. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of finding that in the character, and sort of when you talk about the research you did, what was it about Rosalee that you really latched onto?
Misha and Joe talk a lot about this one letter a young woman wrote, where she debated whether or not she would run. And for them, that was the inspiration for Rosalee, exploring what goes into making that choice. For me, yes, the end scene was something that William still actually did do. He would always ask runaways, men and women who survived, tell me your story, and kept an amazing account, which I actually read as well. But for me, it was, I don't know, there was something interesting about my brother, my little James. There's so many different entry points, but for me, he was such a trigger. And I think maybe because I have little brothers and he kind of reminded me of him. There's a motivation, and there's something that you become a person because you want to make them proud. They're watching you, And so a lot of what Rosalee does was driven by the younger generation, by the James, by the Boo, and who she was as a person. She's constantly thinking about other people. She'll put her body out there to save other people. It's really not motivation for herself oftentimes. It's for the group, for the collective. Like in the pilot when she takes the lashings for her brother. But when you go back to the slave narratives, you really do get a sense of, they were just trying to survive. They were survivors, and they would steal little liberties here and there. Even if they slept in the attic on the floor, they would find a way to appreciate that attic and appreciate that floor. And we're offered so many liberties today that we take for granted. And for them back then, the smallest thing was because they were denied so much, the smallest thing they were able to be grateful for.
They took questions from the audience, and something that came up a lot was the idea of research and what you did. And you've talked a little bit about that, but one of the questions from Ash is whether or not the Macon 7 was a real group based on specific individuals, or is it sort of an idea that represents what happened at this time?
Yeah, the Macon 7, from what I know, Joe, you can correct me. Our amazing creator, Joe, is here. Stand up, Joe. One of our He's the other half. Misha is not here. But I believe the Macon Seven, they were composite characters, right? Inspired by different stories read in the slave narratives. There actually is one character called Cato in the slave narrative, but he's not Cato. He's a lot nicer than Cato. But I think, they just read these narratives and just kind of pulled inspiration. I kind of did find the couple I think Noah and Rosalee are based on, because the woman's name is Rose. And they kind of, they have things that are similar to Noah and Rosalee. But yeah, it wasn't based on one person. It was more so composite.
In filming the show, it is a 10-episode series that takes weeks and weeks to film. It is grueling work that is both physical and emotional. What was important for you from an acting point of view about maintaining sort of the headspace over this long period of time? Do you stay in it when you act, when you're not on set? Do you go in and out seamlessly? What was it like being this character for such a long stretch of time?
Ooh, it was challenging. Definitely the most physically challenging role I've ever played in my life. We had a lot of ego, so a lot of the stunts that you see, the scene when Maloney's character, August, throws me off the boat, that was really me and Maloney, because he said he was going to do it, so I was going to do it too. Which our producers weren't happy about. When we're fighting in the river, that's really us. When Aldous Hodge, who plays Noah, when he and I are running through the swamps, that's really, that's us. And shooting in Baton Rouge. Anyone ever been to Baton Rouge? Yeah. So you feel me, right? Snakes, alligators, water moccasins. These mosquitoes are not mosquitoes down there. Their mosquitoes are like vultures. I had at one point 27 mosquito bites on my leg. But again, my process, sometimes a scene will demand that you stay, for me, in character all day long. But, I was able to come in and out, but I found when I would go home, I was dreaming in character. And it was really hard to sleep and just get rest and recharge. Again, and I don't want to complain and act like, what we did was so hard. While it was definitely challenging, we were just so humbled to be able to give voice to these stories. These were real men and women who actually did this. And we could go home and fall asleep on our comfy mattress, take a shower, and wake up to our alarm clock. They didn't have a water bottle that they could just chug, And for me, while this was one of the most hardest roles I've ever played, I kept reminding myself that I had absolutely no right to complain, because I just wanted to be used as an instrument to try to do justice to their voice.
I would imagine that's sort of like a feeling that would have to permeate set, and everyone is sort of on the same page. This is such an amazing collection of actors that assembled to tell this story. From top to bottom. What was it like sort of being in the throes of that acting community who've all come together to really tell this story?
Yeah, I think we all, had such a pressure on ourselves to do justice to the story. No one really, there really weren't any divas on set, except for Alano, who plays Cato. I tease him all the time because he used to walk around with an umbrella and a fan, and our amazing makeup artist Bailey would be waving him and be like, Cato, come on, stop it. But no, really, I think, everyone brought their A game because, again, we had that sense of humility when we approached it. And the conditions were really rough. But the crew, the cast, everyone just wanted to do this story justice, and everyone believed in it so much that, it became like a safe space. And we were all in it together. We were all in the trenches together. We were in battle together. And we honestly became like a family. We really did. Like, we were sharing, books that we read. We were sharing documentaries, sharing facts with each other. And then on the weekends, Aldous would barbecue, and we would all hang out, and it was a lot of fun.
So when the 10 episodes come to a close in terms of production, I mean, what is it like for you to have to step out of that character for the foreseeable future? I mean, did you have trouble letting it go, or was it very easy to sort of, yes, you're saying yes?
No, I absolutely. I don't even know if I still have let Rosalee go. I just finished a film, and there were moments that, I would think about her or feel her. But yes, last year when we wrapped, it was really hard. It definitely was really hard to just recharge myself. We had one thing was interesting. Towards the end, we had to do some reshoots, or not really reshoots, but like pickups. Like the network would watch it and be like, "Well, why do we see her running from there and then we don't see her running here?" Those kind of things, right, Joe? And so there were like little shots that we had to pick up, and I remember putting the uniform back on, the house girl uniform, and I said to Misha, who is this girl? Because Rosalee had changed so much. I had changed so much over the course of the first season that she was foreign to me. That shy girl, that internal girl was just like, wait, I don't even know who she is. But I think Rosalee, we're about to get back in it. So I have a feeling she's going to be with me for a long time.
Good. Well, I think we all hope so as well. Many seasons. But what is also great about Underground is that it is not only a phenomenal show, but it was received so well. I mean, it broke ratings records for WGN when it premiered. And we're also in a time, Roots premiered last night, also broke records. I mean, it's a situation where it feels like an audience that has been craving stories is finally getting them. I mean, how exciting is it to be telling stories in a time when that option is available?
Oh. I feel so honored to be a part of Underground because, it's just I'm so proud of it. It's exactly like you said, what a time to be alive. Really, Underground, for so many different reasons, I feel proud of it. One, because, how often, and look, thank God we have Shonda Rhimes and Lee Daniels, but how often do we see strong Black women portrayed like Misha and Joe have written these characters, and it is such a beautiful thing. Yeah. And, I see my grandmother in these characters. I see my mom in these characters, and the subtleties, the complexities, the beauty of who we are. We've only just begun to explore, my goodness. But yeah, it's a very exciting time to be alive. And it was so much fun to live tweet every Wednesday. That was my first time doing it. It was so much fun to do that with the audience and just get the real-time feedback. Of Rosalee, why you stabbed that boy? And the frustrations of things. It was so great. And, I think audiences are responding to the timeliness of Underground, that, there's still things that we can relate to today that we see that happened well over 150 years ago.
Absolutely. You were talking about telling women's stories, which I think is something the show does incredibly well. And I think you've done also an amazing job of playing really interesting, layered, complex women throughout your career. I mean, obviously it's important to you to not play a prop or, something like that. I mean, is that something that as an actor you sort of just realize really quickly in your career? Or do you only realize it through playing it and be like, well, this is terrible. I can never do this again?
Both. My mom was my manager and my acting coach when I was younger. And, my mom was an activist. She met my dad in the movement working with Angela Davis. And so she had a really high standard for art. And it was never about the money. I mean, it was, my resume was not 50 pages long because she would say no to everything anyone would offer me. So I think I've inherited her standards. And we would watch films a lot. And honestly, the actresses that I admire, the Kate Blanchetts, the Meryl Streeps, the Angela Bassett's, the Alfre Woodards, they don't play those roles, you know? And while it might take a long time and you might not always work, you won't see them as set dressing. Yeah. And, you know, my career ain't been perfect. And a few times that I have kind of set in that role, it just doesn't feel good. You know, you don't want to go to work and not be stimulated, you know? That's the whole reason why we do it. It's why we're artists. You want that stimulation. And far too often, writers just want to cast someone based on her looks or that she fits a type. And, you know, that's not interesting to me, and it never will be. And again, I don't care if my role is large. You know, it could be small. It's just, you know, making sure that my identity is not directly defined by my male counterpart. Mm-hmm. You know, and if it is, then it's just not interesting to be a part of.
Absolutely. I mean, you have been acting since, or in front of a camera at least, since how old?
Since I was 10 months old.
Okay. So obviously you have an innate gift or are good at it. I mean, but when did you know you liked it? Do you remember, or has it just been a part of you for so long?
Yeah, I mean, at first it was just kind of something my older siblings were doing, because they wanted to do it. They wanted to be like the Huxtable kids. And my mom put them in the business in New York just, you know, like as a habit, like Little League. And yeah, like I got too many kids. I got to find something for them to do. And, you know, I just kind of fell into it because of this photographer, you know, asked me to join my siblings in a picture. And, well, not ask me, ask my mom, because I was 10 months. But yeah, honestly, the first real memory of me being like, you know what, this is actually really cool was Eve's Bayou. I think up until then it was fun, you know, it was fun. But then with Eve's, I kind of, you know, started to understand, oh, there's actually there's a whole world in this. Yeah.
You know, Eve's Bayou is so interesting because I think a lot of times when you see child actors or young actors, there's a sense that they're maybe parroting or they're sort of doing what they're told. And when you see an actor who is young give such a performance that feels as organic as yours in that movie did, those are the moments when you're like, this is someone special and this is something special. I mean, do you have the ability to sort of watch your old work, or are you someone who cannot?
It depends. It depends. If I'm, you know, pushing the channel and I see Eve or Full House, I'll be like, oh, so cute, and turn. I don't really watch my work, and I've been given different advice. You know, Denzel told me it wasn't necessary. He was like, I don't watch my work. And I think he said he had to start to watch his work once he started directing, which is interesting because he was like, oh, I gotta know how to direct me, you know, what works. But then I recently did a film with Wendell Pierce, and he was like, Jurnee, watch your work. You know, how are you gonna know what bad habits you have? And you know, it's a good point. Though, when I watch me, I'm like, man, that bump. See, truthfully, I'm like, dang it. I should have put some salicylic acid on that day, you know, and I'm not paying attention to anything I should be paying attention to. I'm paying attention to all the things that are then going to make me conscious the next time I have to do a scene with a bump. Come on, y'all know what I'm talking about. No, but although doing this whole live tweeting thing definitely broke me of that. And I think in general, Underground broke me of my vanity. You know, because it's not like we could cake on a lot of makeup. And there was something really liberating and freeing about that, of just going to work and it being about the work and not really caring about your angles or, you know, if I wake up and look puffy or, you know, not really care about that because they had no sense of that. So, yeah.
Obviously, the material it's in service of is worlds apart, but hearing you talk about sort of that vanity-free experience makes me think it must have felt a little bit like Friday Night Lights in some ways, because that's another show where, I mean, you don't do blocking, you don't have any awareness of where the camera is at any time, right?
No, we didn't rehearse. We didn't have blocking. We didn't have really lighting time. The cameras would go up, and we would ad lib. Every take would be different. Sometimes I would just say to Mike B and be like, "Look, she's not saying this, so I'm not saying this," and he'd be like, "Cool, I'm not saying that either." And then you just go with it. The ad libbing aspect was like a prerequisite for Friday Night Lights. When I auditioned for Jason Katims and Peter Berg, Pete read with me and threw the sides on the floor and just started going off about football. And, I come up, I was raised with 4 boys, so I'm really a tomboy. And went at it with him, and he started like ad-libbing with me. He got up and he said, "You're a fucking great actress," and gave me the job on the spot. And so that's what all the actors did. I mean, the writing, look, not to take away from Jason, the writing is amazing, but they really wanted us to make these characters our own. Jason would say, "Look, I don't know what it's like to be necessarily, how a 16-year-old black girl in the South would talk necessarily. So please, by all means, if that doesn't sound natural, say it how you would say it." And I think that's one thing that people respond to so well with Jason's work, is that he really encourages actors to collaborate with him.
Yeah. I mean, an amazing experience, but does something like that ruin you for all other future jobs? Because you're like, "Oh, I don't get to come in and write all my own lines on this other show now"?
Look, I mean, with certain jobs, yes, it absolutely spoiled me rotten, and it was awful. Like, I went and did a TV show right after, and I was like, "Wait, you're telling me where to stand? There's a mark? What is this?" No, but with a show like Underground, I wouldn't even attempt that. Like, not only is the writing so impeccably well written, but a period piece, I'm not gonna come in and try to ad lib for a period piece. It's like it needs to be crafted so beautifully. And the words that Joe and Misha have chosen are so thought out.
Absolutely. I'm curious, the idea of sort of bringing yourself to a role in that very overt way on Friday Night Lights, for example, I mean, does that come naturally to you, or is that a skill you sort of had to learn? And if so, what was the key to really just being in the moment like that?
Honestly, I credit my improvisation skill. This is so random, but to the late great Robin Williams. Really? Which is so random, and a lot of people don't know this, but I worked with him when I was younger on a film called Jack, and that's all he did. That's all he did. And Francis wanted us to do that. And Robin would ad-lib with me and really teach me like these ways to stay on your feet and stay in the moment and say what's the first thing that's coming to your head. And then as I worked years later with people like Denzel, Denzel does that all the time. Loves to ad-lib. He'll throw the script away and say, "The script's not the Bible." Completely go off book and then come back. And then you're like, "Oh, the words take on a completely different meaning. Now bring the script back. Now that we've veered off, come back. And oh, that's what I'm saying. That's what my intention is. It's got a bottom to it now." So I love that. Yeah. I totally love that. I mean, it's freeing in a way. Sometimes I'll do it when I'm struggling with a scene. Sometimes I'll do that like in my room, completely throw the script away to try to understand what am I really saying, and then go back to the script.
That's so interesting, because I would imagine that it's a very sort of organic way to work, because all you're really doing is just lots and lots of like character study and really just like digging into it.
Yeah, you're really just, when you hit the beats, you're trying to understand the objective. What's my objective? What's my goal in this beat? And you could say that, 5 different ways, as long as you're hitting the objective. And so it's forcing your brain to not just memorize the line, but to memorize your intention. in that line.
I'm wondering, I mean, it strikes me that a lot of the things you're talking about when you talk about underground and the live tweeting aspect and these sort of really organic elements, there's like a lot of theater undercurrents to it. I mean, do you feel like that's a muscle, like being on stage 8 nights a week, something you would want to flex?
Oh my goodness, yes, and I have. Not too long ago, I had the amazing honor of sharing the stage with Cicely Tyson.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
No, I feel like people want you to come back to the stage.
Yes, and I really want to also. I loved that, which is a completely different muscle too. You know, every single night I would find something different, and you know, oh my goodness, Cicely Tyson. Oh my goodness, I bow to that woman. She is a force. First of all, let me tell you, this woman would come to rehearsals. And she would, you know, I remember one day she was stretching and she was touching her toes. And I was like, "Oh, Miss Tyson, are you okay?" You know. And she's like, "Yeah, baby, I just did the Santa Monica stairs." Have any of us done the Santa Monica stairs recently? I have not. No, I mean, she was a force. She would wake up and exercise and drink her 4 cups of warm water with lemon and like, she is a force. And, you know, if I could have an ounce in my pinky, you know, what she has, you know, I would just die a happy woman.
What is it that you enjoy about the stage experience and that, you know, now you have that pull to sort of go back to?
The live audience, man. You can't beat that. We used to have that in television, like sitcoms and stuff, which we don't really anymore. There's a different energy that you get every night. There were things we would do in rehearsal, and then once we put it on its feet in front of an audience, the audience would laugh, and we were like, "Oh, I didn't realize that was funny," but okay. You know, there's like these beats that they pick up on that it almost helps you discover more things about the character as you're doing it. And I learned so much from Miss Tyson, so much. She would do things different every single night. It was like she was doing it for the first time every night.
I mean, I guess on some level that's how you have to approach it, though, too, because for the audience, it is a different story every night.
It really is. It's a different play. You'll never see the same play that you see one night. You'll never see that again. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about theater. It is so immediate. You know, we live in such a like social media world. We're all so disconnected, and we have like short attention spans. And you can watch the same 6-second clip over and over and over. But with theater, all of that's washed away, and you're forced to be transported into a different experience. It's like when you go to a live concert. It's so different than when you listen to a CD, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I that was one of my favorite things about theater, was feeding off the audience.
For sure. And you get to use your imagination in a really fun way too, where
Yeah.
you sort of create all the elements that are there that they don't see, which I would imagine is sort of something you have to do in a project like True Blood, where there's like werewolves and vampires. I mean, who knows? Just all crazy things happening.
So true. That's a very good analogy. Yeah, True Blood was a lot of that. And this green X, that is the wolf. You know.
I mean, is it like when you have an opportunity like that, where this green X is the wolf, is it like childlike play where you have to just be like, all right, I am just going to give in to my imagination and we are just going to act crazy at blank space?
Absolutely. You know, that was so fun to do True Blood because, you know, the makeup, the special effects, you would walk on the lot and, you know, you had zombies going to lunch with blood just dripping down them. And you're just like, there's nowhere else on earth where people get to come to work and do this. You know, it's so much fun. And yeah, you know, we were working with sometimes real wolves, rats, which I hate rats. For some reason, Sam loved to turn into a rat. And he turned into a rat when he came in to rescue me or something like that. But yeah, there was a lot of that, like, I'm going to use my imagination, and that's what this is. And you know, it is a lot of fun to use that muscle as well.
You know, you've talked a lot about, I mean, you've talked about stage, you've talked about drama, sitcoms, live audiences. I mean, what are the things that still you feel like you want to do? Like, are there other genres you haven't gotten an opportunity, or other platforms you haven't had the opportunity to explore?
Oh my goodness, yes. I feel like I've only just begun, really. You know, I really want to do Broadway, which I've never had the opportunity to do, but I always go and see amazing shows. You know, I would love to do a musical one day, only because I respect musicians so much, and I'm frightened to death of it. But I would love to conquer that, you know, at some point in my life. My husband is like a brilliant musician and like has perfect pitch and all this amazing crap. And you know, like I'm in such awe of you know, singers and musicians who have that skill. And I love to dance. Yeah. So I would love to one day to be able to
What is the dream Broadway musical for Jurnee to be in?
Oh my goodness, I'm a fan of so many. I love, one of my favorite musicals growing up was An American in Paris. Okay. I know, it's random. I love Gigi. I love like the old musicals that people probably hate. Because my mom, she used to play Sound of Music for us and pretend like she was, you know, Fraulein Maria. And we were the Von Trapp family singers.
Do you ever talk with your siblings? I mean, do you guys miss working together? I know Jesse got to be in Underground, but there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, working together. Do you guys miss that? Or is it cool to watch everybody sort of go and do their own thing and sort of take over their own little corner of the industry?
Oh, yeah, it's so cool. You know, I mean, I think, well, there is a project we worked on recently together that was a lot of fun, that will come out at some point. And my sister and I actually, she's a producer. She went and studied directing and producing at Tisch. She and I have been writing a lot, and because that is something I want to step into, is directing and writing. Because I don't care to always be in it, you know, and I do see myself doing that in the near future, because there's so many stories I want to tell, and there's actors that I'm fans of, you know, that I would love to see them explore different colors. But yeah, as far as my siblings are concerned, you know, we're so nerdy with each other. Like, we just love each other, and like, it's gross. Like, we're so close, we're our own cult pretty much. Like, we all dress the same, have the same jokes. And you know, when we see each other succeed, when I tell you like the text threads, like, oh my gosh, Chelsea, we saw you and Kelly and whatever that, Kelly.
Now.
Kelly. You know, it's like we're always just so proud of each other, and it's like we have like a cheerleading club for each other. So I do think our paths inevitably are going to continue to cross and stuff. But we're just I'm so happy to see my family, you know, living their dreams.
For sure. It's cool to hear you talking about wanting to get into writing and directing, because I think there's this amazing sort of surge of people who are interested in not waiting for stories to come to them and being proactive in telling their stories. I mean, but how much of that is sort of seeing what's out there and saying, like, yes, there is great stuff, but if I really want to be a proactive person in this industry, like, I have to go and do it myself.
Look, there's great stuff being produced, but there's not a lot of great stuff. Like, I'm just going to be honest, you know, and I'm not telling you all anything you don't know. A lot of these scripts we read, it's just like, how is this getting done? And I'm so proud of the work that a lot of my peers are doing, but it's like few and far between still. And I think art is moving in the right direction in all mediums. You know, I'm so excited about the direction we're moving in. But yeah, like I can't wait. You know, I can't anymore. And you know, just as an artist, you're dying to just create art. And I grew up on sets, so I definitely have the passion just for storytelling in general.
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions from the audience. The first is from Hillary, and she was wondering if you feel there's a continuity to your work leading from your performance in Eve's Bayou and The Great Debaters to now at Underground. Do you feel like there's like a common thread between everything?
I guess. I think so. You know, my end goal, I don't really think about the stuff I've done in the past. My end goal is to have eventually a great body of work that I'm proud of. But I think, you know, naturally my taste, I am drawn to projects like that. I'm drawn to exploring what it means to be a female. What is this identity that we have? And how does the world define us in different realms and different time periods? So yeah, there's a pattern in, I think, the type of roles I'm drawn to. Yeah.
Our next question is, what was your most challenging role and why?
You know, they've all been challenging for different reasons. Again, like I was saying earlier, Rosalee was definitely the most physically challenging role I've ever had. I've had some of the hardest scenes I've ever had to do in Underground. And we're only on season 1. Oh, my goodness. But, you know, Samantha was hard in her own way in Great Debaters. Jess had challenges. You know, so I don't really know what was the hardest. They were challenging in different ways.
Because for them to be memorable, they have to be challenging, I would imagine. Otherwise, it's sort of like I just leave it and I forgot about it, that it even happened.
Yeah, I have some of those.
We won't talk about that.
Yeah,
well, lastly, I'm curious, you know, you have a room of actors in front of you, and you obviously have not only done great work, but you've worked with other great artists. And when you think about advice that has meant a lot to you or been helpful for you, I mean, what is a piece of advice that you like to impart to other actors, or you wish someone had told you earlier in your career?
Oh, so much. You know, I think the age-old advice that we all are kind of given is to know your lines. Even if they encourage improvising, know your lines. And to show up to set on time. But, you know, one thing Denzel told me is don't start at 90%. And, you know, as actors, we want to, I don't know, you have this idea in your head of like, okay, this monologue, oh, I'm going to kill this monologue. When really, it's about finding the colors. And 5% actually might be more appropriate at this moment than 90%. And sometimes it's harder to restrain yourself. And he would always say, less is more. Less is more. The hardest thing to do in acting is to not act. and to just be. Yeah. To just be.
Absolutely. Jurnee, thank you so much for coming
out
tonight. Thank you to all of you so much for your interesting questions. And congratulations, season 2 of Underground coming soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.